Hello again. Welcome to Looking at Social Justice, our 79th episode. It's been a joy working each week with Nick and Rudy about getting our guests together about a topic that we all agree is important, something that is vital to our local community. Our last guest was Gloria Hernandez, who is a social justice advocate and activist, a mental health counselor, someone who has been working with the most needy here in Fresno for a long time. In our first program, she was able to share the basic commitment that she's been making with many other good people and the efforts that she's been championing, I would say, in favor of a review for transparency and accountability in the Fresno Police Department. What we're going to do in this second program is have her reprise a little from our first program, catch us up just a little about herself and why she does what she does. And then we're going to look case by case, beginning in 2005, certain egregious cases of violations of human dignity, and she'll explain why they are part of her Fresno Stolen Lives commitment. So Gloria, you might want to remind anyone who didn't watch the first show who you are and why you do this commitment in favor of looking at the Fresno Police Department with the eyes of helping them do their job better.
And that's a good point because I've been accused of being anti-cop, and that's not it. I'm anti-bad cop. So I want to make it clear. I do it because I know how to do it, and my mom told me to help people. And she would tell me, ayúdales, tú sabes cómo. And I go visit her, and she'd have a line of people for me. So I would never tell her when I was going to show up. And then she would give my home number, so I would give her my business cards. Don't have them call me at home. So I think it's important to know that there's so much pain involved. I've been very fortunate. I've never been assaulted by the cops. I've been a bad girl, but I've had good communication with them. But I think it's those people that are affected that just their road closes. You know, my job is to demystify. And it's not a job that I get paid for. It's just something that I have to do. And so I do it. It hurts not to do it, actually. I wanted to talk about my concerns. In the last segment, we talked about why I did what I did. But I think the biggest concern I have is that every time there's a shooting, Dyer would get on the TV and he would have his say. And he would badmouth the person. And I would call it jury tampering because he was already setting the stage if the case was going to go to trial to make sure that the jury knew that this was a bad person. And I've learned to separate what happened to whether the person was bad or not. That is not what the person deserved. The person had a right to get arrested, and the police have a duty to bring the case to justice. And then there's all these other players. There's the district attorney. Does the case even have merit? Is the person a bad person or not? Drop the charges if they're not, continue if they are. And then you have the judge and you have the jury. But the people that died did not have that right. Their constitutional right to due process was taken away. And due process means what I just explained, the right to be heard by your peers. So to me, when he would do that, I would see it as jury tampering. There's been too many expensive lawsuits, and we'll get into it later on in this segment. And as part of the lawsuits, they not only paid out money, but Jerry promised to do A, B, and C. And the fact is that he never reformed the police department like the settlements asked him to. And that brought down the morale of the department. I really think that had a big impact on them. One of the biggest things that grinds with me, as I said earlier, is life is sacred. Every person that has died has a name. He's a human being, him or she is a human being, and they have a circle of friends and family. One of my biggest concerns are the in custody deaths. These are people that get arrested by the police and somehow never make it home. They either die in jail because of what happened with their interaction with the police, or they die in the hospital. And because those names never come out in the Fresno Bee or Action News or whatever, I'm not able to gather those names. And when I do the Public Records Act request and ask for the officer involved in the death, I have to provide them with a name. And so there's a lot of in custody deaths that I cannot document. And that is so hurtful to know that there's a family out there that I couldn't reach. And there's a name out there that we can't repeat on October 22. Also, I'm currently working with a bunch of families, and as I work with them, I'm learning more and more about it, is the unsolved murders. We had a meeting in 2018 with 6 families whose cases never got solved. And as I learn more and more, I'm finding out that a lot of these unsolved murders are people of color. So I'm concerned about why, they're not solved. Why are they given low preference? In one case I'm working with, the mother told me that they immediately jumped to the conclusion that Cuate, help me, I can't remember his name, Delberto Ocampo, that he was a gangbanger. And then 5 months down the road, they tell her, oh no, we verified he's not a gang member. But the case is still not resolved. And mother is not being called unless she calls. And in talking to an old friend of mine that I ran into, I find out her daughter died 10 years ago. And again, they're not calling her. She has to make the phone calls. And so I wonder, what is the procedure? And I'm thinking of drawing up a Public Records Act request, asking, what is the procedure? What's the law on unsolved murders? How do they get assigned $5,000, but everybody else gets $50,000? I want to know why one person gets solved and the other one doesn't. Is it who you know? So those are the questions that are pending in my mind. One of the issues in working with the families is also when they're getting ready to go to trial, they're threatened by the police department's attorney or the city's attorney and said, if you go to trial and you lose, we're going to sue you for court costs. We're going to sue you for the time that our attorneys took. Well, I'd like to draw attention to one case that nobody talks about, and that is the deputy chiefs, Navarez and Schaefer, who sued Dyer on discrimination claims. And that case was settled out of court. I wish it would have gone to court, because then, they say the light shines in the courtroom because all the darkness is shown. They settled for, $100,000 each. That's $200,000, plus their attorney got $100,000 for his work. But what the people don't know is that we, the taxpayer, paid for the Hollywood attorney assigned to Dyer almost $900,000. So that case was valued at $1.2 million. Now, if he's so concerned about the homeless, why doesn't he reimburse the city for his racial and discriminatory practices? So to me, that's really interesting. And why can't we sue him for what the taxpayers had to pay for his attorney? If he's scaring the families, it should be, what is it that they're using on Trump now? Quid pro quo.
Oh, quid pro quo.
So we can go into the different cases now.
We're talking in that first program, Gloria, and you made the case really strongly several times. Document, document, document. The idea that you have been creating documentation for everything, to shoot from the hip, to be glib and make accusations is not your is not your style. You have looked at the public record, you've gone that extra mile, you've done things that others have not done in the sense of being able to receive documentation, and you were the first one getting that because it's normally not easily given. So if we go in order, let me mention the name, the date, and let you bring up whatever seems pertinent at the moment now in retrospect. Some of these cases are 15 years old. You could tell us why it's still important to remember Gabriel and Rebecca Rodriguez, March 6th, 2005. What is significant about the Rodriguez case?
Well, one thing I want to point out is I'm criticized often as you old gangbanger, and I always respond, well, you know, there's nobody in my family that's a gangbanger. In fact, they're all either in university, have jobs, or in the military. In this case, the homeboy's coming home from the military. They're having a party. They're having a celebration. And lo and behold, all of a sudden the cops show up and they get beaten up. The husband gets beaten up. The wife gets beaten up. The kid gets beaten up. And so they end up filing complaints with all kinds of internal affairs, and cops don't get fired. They're justified. They're justified to beat these families up. So they sue. The process in the lawsuit, for example, I need to explain that so community understands, is that you have 6 months from the incident to file an administrative tort. You go to the city clerk or the attorney, city attorney, and you say, I want to file a complaint. I want to file reimbursement. I want reimbursement. And there's a hell of a lot of reimbursement being done that people don't know about. And then if you don't get reimbursement, then you sue. Then you go to court. Then you have all these depositions, questions, written questions, verbal questions, and then you go to trial. And then the jury and the judge will decide. In this case, it was a lot of money. We paid $3.3 million to settle the lawsuits. 1.7 was paid to 10 family members, and 1.6 was paid to the Rodriguez couple.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. And people should know that the city of Fresno is self-insured. They don't have the lizard out there supporting them. It's us. It's coming out of our taxpayers' money. So again, you might not like me, but like I said, I'm not running for prom queen, and I'm a taxpayer. When we were fighting, I met with the union president, the police union president, and he accused me of being an outsider. And I go, honey, I've been in the city a hell of a long time, and I've been paying taxes this whole time. So I think people need to look at it from that perspective. 1.7 million to the family, 1.6 to the couple. No one died. No one died in this case.
Wow. Second case, we mentioned it in the first program just briefly, the homeless fella, Glen Beaty, February of 2009. What might be significant about Glen?
He was asleep in the wrong place. And he ended up, he was a mentally ill person, and he got beat up so bad, and somebody out there, some cop watcher, gave the film to the TV, and that's why we found out what happened. And that's when the ACLU started asking for the names of the officers. And that's when I finally got the names of the officers, and I was able to find out who the officers were that are killing our people. It was only $75,000, but to this homeless guy, it's a lot of money. Unfortunately, he suffered a lot. He suffered a beating.
Stephen Willis, March 28th of that same year, 2009, a shooting death.
Stephen was coming home. Him and his girlfriend had been, I know this case because I court watch. I went to the court with the family. He was coming home after being on the shooting range, shooting the gun, and the cops had just done some kind of SWAT exercise, or whatever you want to call it, incident. And I guess they were still highly agitated. And so when Steven's driving in the car, they're having a conversation. Girlfriend has to go to the bathroom. So when he's driving into the parking lot of the apartments, he runs over the edge. And I guess that was enough to trigger the cops to go investigate. Girlfriend runs out of the car, runs to the bathroom, but they don't know that. They immediately jump to conclusions that she's a victim of domestic violence or something. At least that was their excuse. And he's walking like he don't know that the cops are there. He's walking, he goes to the back of the car. He pulls out the gun, which is in the holster, by the way, and they immediately start shooting. What wasn't told was that the two cops that are shooting at him are on either side of him, and they're shooting, and he's in the middle. He's in the middle, doesn't know what's going on, and died. It was a very vicious shooting. Now, Mr. Willis, Chris Willis, the father, had to appeal the case because the judge, and this is way back in the day, right? The judge says there's not enough for you to go forward. He appeals it, goes to court, cost him $250,000 to go to appeal. He has the money, not like most of these people. And he wins the appeal and then goes to trial and wins partial. The city again appeals this time, and the court agreed with some part of him, and he still ended up winning quite a bit of money, 1.72 million. But a lot of it was to the attorney fees, because it took a lot. And these were out-of-town attorneys that won the case. I felt so bad sitting in that courtroom. It was mom, dad, and grandma, and me. And that was it. And on the other side, packed with men in blue.
Same year, another Stephen Vargas, police shooting death.
Yeah, this is a repeat shooter also, Palomino. He's driving. For whatever reason, he has a little accident, and they immediately start shooting. It's on video. No, it was not on video. It was what came out at light, and it was a surprise witness, was the postman. He saw how everything came down. And again, the question of how many bullets need to be served on these guys before they end up dead is really bad. It was excessive. It was unreasonable, and the court found that the city was liable. It was 1.3 million. I think he had like 3 or 4 kids. And I remember telling the attorney that there should be some kind of guardianship set up so the kids would have money when they graduate from school. And hopefully they'll go and become lawyers and come back and fight cases like this. But yeah, that was a sad case. There was a lot of family support on that one.
In 2010, in October 5th, Rod Florini.
This was I know this case. I wasn't that involved in it, but the Mecha students came to me, and the Brown Berets, they knew him. He was a nice guy. He just happened to be drunk and firing a gun up in the air. And they shot him up so bad. It was bad. I forget how many, 63 bullets. There was no order to put the gun down or anything. They just, within seconds, he's gone.
2012, June 6th, Jaime Reyes Jr. Another shooting, another 2.2 million settlement. Anything on that case?
The officer lied. The officer lied, and the jury found that he was he was executed. The witness came forward and said it was an execution. Again, the internal affairs and the IPA justified it, but it was won in a settlement, which was 2.2 billion, and supposedly, 2.2 million, and supposedly Dyer was supposed to change the use of force policy. they were supposed to now only shoot the suspect if the suspect poses an immediate threat. That is the moment. At that moment, is there a threat? Not the past, not he's a bad boy, he's a gangbanger. It's at the moment. And I think that was really important. And the reason it's important, it's affecting the current case right now. So that was 2.2 million. Again, we, the taxpayers, are paying for that.
In 2013, in August, Angel Toscano.
Also a bicycle. His brother lives in Arizona. He contacted me. And they were trying to detain him. He just took off on his bicycle. And the cop didn't even like put his lights on. He just hit him in the back, killed him. Killed him. This was less than $1 million, but still, we, the taxpayers, are paying for that. Again, I think it's really important that we understand that even though there's no cop watchers, now we have cameras out there and people have doorbell cameras and all that. The problem is getting access to that information. It's really scary.
In 2014, the next year, Joseph Ma, police shooting death.
This was, do you remember Alfonso Hernandez from the Chicano Youth Center? This was his nephew. I just don't know. Supposedly he had a gun in his hand. Supposedly he ran away. But there's inconsistencies whether he had a gun or not. And again, they said it was supposedly, justified shooting. Supposedly the IA agreed that it was justified. The police department and the DA and the IPA agreed it was justified. It's still pending. That was 2014.
Again in 2014, in June 11th, Miguel Moreno Torrez.
I'm familiar with this one. This young man, the brother came home, and this guy had been drinking, or he was in a crisis or something, and they got into it, and the brother ran out. He was being chased by this guy. I interviewed the witnesses. The witnesses say that he had dropped the knife, and the cops arrived, and within seconds he was dead. And once again, there was so many bullets on him. It's just, they didn't speak Spanish. They could have been behind the car, just like the brother was behind the telephone pole. I mean, I can visualize it by talking to the brothers over the years. 15 to 16 times. We met with Dyer, Foster, the IPA, and the city manager about 10 family members and myself. And we went in with a list of demands. And I again asked Dyer, I remember that conversation real clearly, because I asked Dyer, well, are you all following the Vargas settlement that you're supposed to contact the family 6 months and say, hey, the investigation is on, or it's closed, or whatever? Because sometimes the investigations would last open forever, and you wouldn't file the administrative tort in 6 months, and you lose your right to go to court. So we wanted to make sure through the Vargas case that families would know whether the investigation was open or not. And he said, yeah, I didn't say I was going to do it. I have my deputy chief, Foster, do it. And I remember telling Foster, I'm going to check up on that. And Foster turned around and said, Gloria, what are you doing on black crimes and brown on brown crimes? I go, I'm not doing your job. And little did I know, 6 months later, Foster would have been arrested for selling drugs. I wish I would have known that. But anyway, that case got settled less than 250. I think it was like 24,000 or something. It was peanuts. Peanuts. He left the little girl in Mexico.
We've got about 3 minutes left in our second program. Are there any cases left in the beginning from 2015 forward, or any thoughts that you really know we need to conclude on? You had some recommendations that we don't want to forget to give you a chance to share.
Well, first of all, I want to say, due to my data collection and the protest and everything we've done, the shooting numbers have gone down. They're using less bullets. One of the recommendations of one of the IPA is that you shoot 3 times, stop, and evaluate. They violated that with the last case we talked about. And so, and one of the criticism was that he was using too much lead with the bullets, environmentally and unsafe, etc. My recommendation is someone needs to audit the police training center. Where's that money going to? And also, what exactly are they teaching if we're not actually correcting the problem? Implement the court orders, whether it be into a field memo, policy and procedures, but they need to be implemented. Have an outsider audit the use of force. And then again, the demand, the community's demand is make the IPA really independent by having him report to civilian board, allow him individual investigative powers and subpoena powers. My favorite, and I worked on 3 years with other statewide activists in trying to come up with some suggestions, is bond the police. As a mental health patient rights advocate, I was bonded for $1 million. If I did something wrong, the insurance would cover it. Now, the police doesn't want to give us independent oversight. We'll let the insurance be the oversight. You think the insurance are going to continue covering them after 1 or 2 shootings? If they don't cover you after 1 or 2 accidents, or your premiums go up, you know, you might not get hired. You might get fired because you are not able to acquire a bond. So bond the police.
That would be great, because when you think of an example, like even as a driver, we do know the penalty that we live with. Why is it that isn't understood as a very reasonable solution?
People haven't thought outside the box. I got this from Minneapolis. They tried to do it in the city and weren't able to do it. But I think California is the leading as far as legislation on data collection. That helped us prove that although we only have 8% of the black population, they get beat up like 23 to 28% of the time upon contact with the police department. So I think California is leading, and I think this can be doable in California.
Gloria, we've used up, believe it or not,
Okay.
even our second program. Got to thank you for everything you shared about these particular people. Life is sacred. Looking at social justice includes looking at the dark side of our own way we do justice. Thank you for what you shared. We'll have you again back time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless.